This week's episode of I Was a Teenage Film Snob is not brought to you by a sponsor, like always. It is, however, a collaboration with the film The Last Deal, available right now on Amazon Prime worldwide. If you're in the States, you can also check it out on Tubi. Enjoy the show. Welcome to I Was a Teenage Film Snob. I'm James Chalmers, your friendly neighborhood film snob, and this week it's another solo show, guys. And you know, when I do a solo show, I get an incredible guest. We've had a really wonderful kind of slew of guests lately, all from the industry, and today is no exception. Recently on Instagram, you would have seen me review an incredible film called The Last Deal, based on the lives of people working in the marijuana industry and how legalizing it kind of changed and put pressure on their career, a point of view I never thought of before. And today I'm really lucky. I've got the director of that film. We're going to get to know him and talk about that movie as well. Please welcome to the show, Jonathan Salemi. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Very excited to have you here. First of all, congratulations. What a wonderful movie you've made, and very exciting to see that one.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you taking the time to watch it and then have me on the show.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it was Jamie who reached out and was like, "Hey, like if you get a chance, you should check it out." And I said in my review, I don't know if you caught it. I've seen a lot of movies about the drug industry and tends to focus on the cartels. It tends to focus on the police raids. But you also almost went to like the business management side of things, which I really enjoyed that fresh take. Like we hadn't seen that before. And I never once thought about like, oh no, what about the poor people who are trying to make a living off the drugs? But you managed to tell a story that I thought was really quite heartfelt and made me empathize with people who I never thought I would have empathized with in a movie before. So full marks, I guess, for that as well.
No, that's great. Yeah, we were like, or at least speaking for myself in general, like looking for a way into like a traditional drug story, man against the wall, back against the wall type of story, and focusing and making it more personal that could be any one of us was something that really like attracted me. Like
Yeah.
having that classic anti-hero that you feel you could be as well, or at least myself. I feel like if I were to be dealing drugs, like it would look like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It really caught me off guard. I was fascinated by it. I was just like, wow, like, I've never once put myself in the shoes of someone in that industry. And, when obviously California decriminalized it over a decade ago now, around a decade ago, and we're like, well, that's good. This is good. This is good for the people, the people in California. It's good for the industry. Like, it's definitely of illicit substances, definitely one of the more natural ones. This is everything good about it. And you never once think about, like, well, actually, there were people who were making livings off this, whether it was legal or not. Now this is really changing the industry. So, yeah, it was just I just wasn't expecting that when I turned it on. I did no research before. I'm just going to throw it on. That's how I like to watch all my movies. Don't watch trailers if I can avoid them. Just jump straight in.
Nice.
And it was such a ride for me. It was wonderful. So, um,
That's great. Yeah, I tend to take movies in that same way too lately. Like just if I am attracted to the log line, I see bits of the trailer, like, okay, that's enough. And I like going into it like kind of sight unseen.
yeah, and especially these days, I feel like over the last decade, um, especially the major studios, the big couple, they really throw everything into the trailer and it just ruins the experience. So I decided a few years ago that if I could avoid a trailer, at least until I get to the theater, I'm going to try not to watch it so I can go in as fresh as possible. And I think the first movie I did that with was Hereditary, which might have been a mistake because it was such a bleak film. Um,
Right.
but I've been doing it and I'm finding I'm getting a lot out of it. And certainly with your
Yeah.
film again,
It's
just
fun,
not,
right?
oh, so fun. Makes it so
Yeah.
much more enjoyable. Um, well, Jonathan, thank you again. And I'd love to talk all about The Last Deal and how we got to making it. I understand there's some pretty crazy stories behind the scenes. But before we jump into that, I always like to get to know the person behind the film. So, um, where does it start for you? When did your love of film begin? Is it a love of film? Is it just an industry job for you? Like, how did it all? Where are those origins, and how does it all happen?
I mean, I think it started, or I know exactly when it started. It started when I was a little kid, like maybe around 8 years old,
Mm,
and my dad would project super 8 millimeter family films on the living room white wall.
yep.
And it was like my grandmother and birthday parties and my sisters and stuff like that. And I was just always like just mesmerized by this projector in the back and like,
Mm,
and then we projected on the wall. And I would just love when my dad brought that out, and I would just be mesmerized by that. And so when he started taking me to the movies and I got old enough that my mother would take me shopping with her, and there was like a VHS
mm,
rental store in the supermarket, and she'd let me rent movies, and I would just watch the same film over and over and over again. I just loved it. And then my dad upgraded from the Super 8 camera to a VHS, like that old
yep.
school Marty McFly camera.
I
And
had one. I know exactly what you're talking.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
and I just started making stop animation GI Joe films with that, and then shooting like the neighborhood kids and
Hmm.
editing it in camera. Meaning, I'm a little kid, so I can't go and splice things together and use editing software or anything like that. And I would just do it in camera, and I just fell in love with it, and knew when I graduated from college, I would move out to California. And that's pretty much how the trajectory happened. I knew very early on, and just always fascinated by it. When I was old enough to go to the theater by myself or with friends, I'd stay there all day and watch like
Yeah.
3 movies. So it's just like a very like uh, I think it's cathartic experience. I think you
Yeah.
call it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That seems. You mentioned staying at the theater all day. That feels like a very uniquely American thing. I say it all the time. Like even going back to like films like a Last American Version, stuff like that. It's very much let's stay here all day. Our parents are working or they're doing their own thing. Let's go theater jumping. So, unfortunately, it's an experience I never got to have, but it sounds very uniquely American. Do you remember? Were there any particular films in your childhood, either from those days with your mum and dad, or even when you got a bit older, that really kind of helped put you on your path, or were you just devouring everything?
Yeah, I mean, I was devouring everything. I think I had a good intuition for at the time, even being young, like what was good, what wasn't good. Because like I look back at those films I watched as a kid, and I watch them now, or look at them, I was like, hey, you know what? I had a good intuition on what was good to watch
Mm,
and what wasn't the best movie and stuff like that. And um, the Walt Disney films, I watched them like nonstop,
yeah,
like Old Yeller and the Ichabod Crane one with the pumpkin head. But like even as I got older, I would watch more Mel Brooks and
yeah,
just nonstop Mel Brooks. And then yeah, as I got to turn like 12 or so, it was like a steady ingestion of the Stallone and Schwarzenegger and um watching like Stripes with Bill Murray,
yeah.
seeing woman naked for the first time on camera, like stuff like that, like a 12-year-old boy would do. But yeah, and it just progressed into like a lot of like action and gangster and that sort.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. You mentioned specifically Stallone and Schwarzenegger because I can definitely see that influence in your own film, and it's not as kind of like over the top as as some of those films in the
Right.
'80s, which are nonstop action and kind of cheesy lines. But there's definitely a sense. I'm like, oh, this guy definitely has seen a few Stallone films, seen a few Schwarzenegger films. Definitely, I think in a lot of the action and some of the fight choreography, it feels very inspired by that, which is really cool.
Yeah,
Um,
or at least the best that I can do with what I have. But yeah, no, it's absolutely true.
Yeah. I think it's funny also you mentioned seeing a woman naked on film for the first time. I think that's probably like a formative moment for most teenage boys. I still remember mine. I think mine was Caddyshack.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know the exact scene you're talking
of
about.
course you
Yeah, it
do
was.
because that's all we had.
Yes, and I go back and I watch it again and
Yeah,
again.
that or Airplane, because Airplane there's a split second, which is embarrassing to admit. I'm like, I know if you split second, like when all
Oh,
chaos
really?
erupts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot about that part, but I think I know which part you're talking about.
I think I'm really revealing a lot about my character today.
Yeah. I think it's every 12-year-old boy. Like I got a nephew who's 9,
Mm,
and I see like the beginnings of his like learning about the birds and the bees.
yeah.
So it's cute.
And they don't make films quite like that anymore. You know, we don't really have that genre of kind of madcap screwball comedy where it does get a little bit raunchy, but not so raunchy you couldn't take a teenage, like a 13-year-old or 12-year-old to see it. Like these
Right.
days, that comedy doesn't exist, which I think is a real lost
No,
part of
nor like kids films with people doing coke and stuff. Isn't that wild?
yeah,
Like growing up watching Crocodile Dundee, and my parents were like, "Hey, you can watch this with us." And there's like drug use and all that stuff in it, but it's kind of a movie that kids can watch.
yeah. Or like anything that John Hughes did, like in the 80s. Like Ferris
Yeah.
Bueller is a PG here in Australia, and there's some pretty serious cursing in Ferris Bueller. Not a lot of it, but like for a kids' film,
Yeah.
it's quite shocking. And even obviously you go to Breakfast Club and stuff like that, which I think is marketed towards teens. But when I watched it for the first time, I was like, "Geez, this is this is really intense. I'm 12. Like, what's going on?" Um,
Yeah.
Fascinating. Very, very cool. Now, you also mentioned briefly college. So, did you go to college to study film, or I know a lot of filmmakers go to college to do something else, and they're like, no, 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 it's got to be film. I'm leaving this and then heading off. So, was it a college degree in film, or did you kind of find your path later?
No, so my parents were like, "Hey, go to school, get a real diploma,
Yep.
and then go do what you want to do." So that was the rule, and that's what I did. I studied business management. It started off studying marine biology. That seemed kind of fun
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, you would think so. Like I thought so. But then once all the chemistry started hitting and all that stuff I had to study, I was just completely blanked, and
Yeah.
it's like, all right, business management's easy enough, paint by numbers. So did that. I mean, I wish it was film school. It would have been fun to learn more about film history and compositions and that sort of thing during that time, but it didn't really affect too much. Like maybe I would have had like a student thesis film at the end, but I moved to California at 21, 22, got an internship at Sony Pictures, and then I
Oh,
was
awesome.
off directing my first feature at 27. So and doing and I shot that on film, and film's expensive and you had to take time off to process it and pay for it. And I was making my first movie. It took me like 2 years to shoot it. And in doing so, I learned everything I would in film school.
Yeah.
So if anything, I've always seen my life as in all things being like I'm somehow 7 years behind all the time.
Sure.
Like
Okay. Yeah.
and everything, like got married later and stuff like that, and but with specifically the film stuff, I was like, hey, it's fine. I learned this, and then I just was off to the races shooting nonstop, and um you sort of like just fall into your own path.
I agree. It's so funny you mentioned business management. I literally interviewed a director a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Same thing. He's like, I went to school for business management, got my degree, hated it, discovered film. There I was. So I was like, wow, that's so interesting that it seems to be a go-to for a few directors. And I think like it's so interesting that we have film school. The same reason, like I think it's interesting we have film critics. Like it's an art form. It's not something that it's good to learn technical things, but I think when it comes to storytelling, we'll have our own brand. And look, I've seen your movie a couple of times. Like,
Oh, thank you.
no film school required, I don't think. And look at all the greats. Like Tarantino didn't go to film school. Rodriguez, Nolan, they didn't go to film school. They watched movies, they picked up a camera and said, "Hey, let's go." So,
Just keep
um,
going,
yeah,
like I see it now, like with just writing scripts in general. Like I see starting as someone who wrote their first script, and you don't really know what you're doing. You're sort of guided by instinct and from the movies you watched, and then it takes like 5 or 7, like to like really find out what your voice is, be confident in the art and how you want to mold it. And I feel like right now, I feel much more confident in my writing style, and this is what I'm trying to do, and this is what I'm trying to explore, and rules I'm trying to break. And it takes a while to learn your again, to learn your path
yeah,
and your individual voice.
yeah, absolutely. You mentioned also that your first film you directed at 27 or 28, sorry, for Sony
Yeah.
Pictures. What was that film? I haven't gone through like your full
I
back
wish it
catalog.
was for Sony Pictures.
Oh,
So
was it for you
it's
interning at Sony? Sorry, I got that
yeah,
confused.
correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that movie is not available anywhere. It's called Anti Up.
Okay.
I shot it feature. It was kind of like a rom-com.
Okay.
So it was like going back to Mel Brooks. That's kind of what I knew.
Mm,
So I made this American Pie kind of film,
sure.
which was kind of funny because American Pie came out around this time point, and
Yep.
the producers from American Pie contacted me after it because it played in one theater in LA. And here's the thing, like, and this is where maybe film school or manager or mentor or something like that comes in hand. Like I did get some phone calls from when that movie played, asking me like who I am, what I'm doing next. You don't really know how to navigate those waters,
Yeah.
distribution and all that stuff. So in many ways, that movie was a big L for me. Like
Okay.
it was a big failure. And but it was also a huge victory and success in terms that I learned so much and it platformed me or springboarded me into making the next film, which was a short. And then that short was like heads and tails, like just the cinematography and everything around it was a different animal than Ante Up, and that's called Sidewalk Symphony, and that played around the world and won awards and got shortlisted at the Academy Awards for
Oh
Best
wow.
Live Action. So yeah, it did really well, and then I just kept making these shorts and stuff like that, and learning what my voice was, and it took all these different roads to being like, hey, I think my voice is this, and I went down a Terrence Malick road because
Mm,
I'm a Terrence Malick fan. I was like, hey, maybe this is what I want to tell, is these very like deep dramas, and then it started going in this area where it started going a little bit more commercial. I had my first taste of stunts, and I had a film
yep.
that had stunt work. And when I did that, I was like, oh, that's really cool. I like that a lot. And my dad was always telling me over the years, he's like, hey, Jonathan, make a horror film.
Mm,
Everyone watches horror, make an action and stuff like that. And it took a bit for me to discover, like, no, what I've always enjoyed is these Chuck Norris or action films or noirs from the 40s and 50s. Like those are the movies I always like, the 70s. I always love the gritty films of the 70s. And I've reached the point in my career now or in my life, like those are the movies and the stories I want to tell. And I can infuse the drama, I can infuse the Terrence Malick and all this stuff. And that's kind of a long answer to your question, but that's how that sort of got formed.
oh, that's the beauty of a podcast, man. You can take as long as you want to answer. Um, Excellent. Oh, look, it sounds you mentioned it being a bit of an L for you, but I don't know, man. You've been out there doing it for a while, like getting films out there, like contributing to the tapestry of this art form. I think every film you finish is still a line on the board for me. It's like if you look at someone like Tommy Wiseau, who somehow kind of stumbled into success, and regardless of what you feel, how you feel about that movie, it's like, wow, that guy did it and rocked it
Yeah,
for 2 decades, like two
huge.
decades. Yeah,
Huge.
yeah,
Like to achieve what he achieved. My wife and me were in England
mm,
in like 2000 and I don't know, 13 or 14 or something like that. And we're just walking down the streets of London, and there was a poster for the room. And I was like, oh, God, like, because it
yeah.
was playing there. I actually, the one theater that Antioch played in, Tommy, because it's a big theater, it's called the Sunset Five. It's on Sunset Boulevard,
Yep,
like in the heart of Hollywood. And so Tommy played his film there, and it would be like the midnight movie.
yep.
And so I finally went and I watched it one time, and he sat next to me.
Ah, that's
And
awesome.
and so I recognize because he's very easy to recognize,
Yes, yeah.
and you're at this movie where people are throwing spoons at the screen and they're playing football in the alleyways and stuff, or the aisles and stuff like that. And I see him and he's laughing, and I'm like, I'd say to him, I'm like, hey, did you ever imagine it would turn into this? And he's like, in his Transylvanian accent or something like that. He's like, I planned all this. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay. And I sat back and I watched the movie, and that stuck in my head. I was like, what? No, that's. And I went back and was like, you planned all this? He's like, yes. And I was like, you're a genius then. Um, but yeah,
Oh, that's so
but
funny.
yeah, but to your point, like to do something like that and to get into the zeitgeist of fandom, like these filmmakers that even have like one hit wonders and stuff like
Mm.
that. The fact that you made that and you did that, it's a huge accomplishment.
That's the thing, absolutely. And there's so much out there. I think just to get it out there, and you said it played on one screen, but it played on one screen, man. That's awesome. Like so like the
Yeah.
hardest thing I think for most filmmakers is either taking that first step or finishing that journey. It's like, all right, I've got a script. Yeah, it's not ready yet. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that seems to be the biggest kind of stumbling block for a lot of filmmakers. So I think the fact that you got one out there and then came back and did it again and again and again, like that's a true testament to a filmmaker. Like to be able to go out there and keep telling your stories. Um,
Incredibly important,
yeah,
like just keep getting them out there because you need to make a lot of crap before you can make something good. Or sometimes it goes in the opposite direction. You just never know. Like,
yeah.
but yeah, just get them out there and get very comfortable in it. And I'm pretty happy that like where I'm at right now that I've gotten enough of stuff out there and I keep trying and I'm doing it nonstop. So like that part of my soul is always being fed.
Awesome. Oh, awesome, man. Um, just a quick side note, and I want to talk about the last deal. You mentioned your dad said you should make a horror film. Based on your filmmaking sensibilities, I would love to see you make a horror film. I think you'd make a
Oh,
very
thank
cool,
you.
frenetic type horror film, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah,
Um,
no, no.
the last deal. Let's talk about it. So, one of the first things we see in the film is it's based on a true story. I was always curious about it. Whenever I see that, obviously some liberties are taken and stuff like this. Is this based on one particular true story? Is it kind of gathered from multiple stories you heard? And how did you go into researching, I guess, the true aspect of this film?
Yeah, so there's two parts of the true story. One is the legalities around
Mhm.
marijuana and the actual people that were dealers that got squeezed out. That's absolutely true. The other part is my buddy who started as a grower and then had a dispensary. And, this is a guy that was carrying hundreds on him all the time and going around town and he's doing well for himself. And then once um, legalization hit and you have like MedMen and all these dispensaries popping up all over the place, he slowly started getting squeezed out of the business.
Mm,
And I saw that part of it. And so those two factors are what I based the movie around that I had a lot of knowledge on, as well as my dad and me were trading cannabis stocks. And I was learning even more about the legalities of the business and how it works. And I used that knowledge because I had a very deep knowledge of growing in the marijuana industry as well, and a lot of friends. And so I had those resources around me, and I was like, okay, use what I have and use what I know to make a higher production value film. And I chose the vehicle of telling the story of a black market marijuana dealer because that was what I knew and what I had around me.
okay. That's really interesting that like you kind of base it on a friend because now knowing that that might also explain why Anthony Molinari's character is so likable because he really is quite. And obviously, it's a fantastic performance. Like he did a
Right.
great job as well. But like you can kind of feel that affection in the writing of like he's not a bad guy. He has to do some things that maybe are quite above board, but he's not a bad guy. Like he's got a girlfriend and he's trying to get out and do something a little kind of get more in the growing again and stuff like that. So that's really interesting. Has your friend seen the film? I'm assuming has your friend
Oh
even?
yeah, yeah, yeah. He's in the film too. So in the dispensary scene where Bobby has the guy's arm behind his
Yes.
back at the very beginning, the
Yes.
guy in the red shirt that's with the arm behind his back is the guy that the movie's based on.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm hoping he's a fan of the film. He thinks you've done him justice, or
Yeah, no, he's a fan of it. It's funny because I finished the movie, like spoiler alert, with someone that goes back to growing. He did a complete 180 or 360, and so my friend actually he ended up getting squeezed out. He no longer does it, but he's a great grower, and I've always told him like go back to growing. Like that's
mm.
what you do best. So like that part is heavily a part of the movie. Like here's someone that should just be growing and that's how the film ends. It kind of bookended in that way in terms of that character's life.
Yeah, you meant that it ends on in quite a positive way. I'll be honest, like not knowing your film style before watching it, it felt like a film that had I guess higher stakes because I hadn't, kind of seen the kind of film it make, and also knowing it's based on a true story. I was like, this could really not have a happy ending. And there are a couple of really tense moments in the flick. Obviously, the final act, or the kind of the final scenes where he's tied to that chair. I was like, this might be the last scene. Like, it felt like it could be the last scene, and I was literally on the edge of my seat. So I'm glad it worked out. He only got squeezed out, and he's still around. But I think the most tense sequence for me is the scene under the bridge,
Oh
where
yeah, that's a good one.
I would put that on par with any other like high tense scene I've seen in cinemas in the last
Awesome.
couple of years. Like, just so, like, I would like, because there's this kid, and obviously you make the film. There's this kid. It's his protege, and you're like, well, they're not going to, spoiler alert, do what they do to the kid. And I was just in awe. I gasped when it happened. I couldn't believe that that's the path that the film took. Is that one of those sequences where maybe permits were harder to get? Like, I know it's obviously quite an unusual location. I understand that there was some in the filmmaking process. I'm getting ahead of myself. In terms of the
Yeah,
filmmaking process,
no,
I know that there were some areas that you weren't able to get permits for. So is that one of those scenes, and how did that all come about?
yeah, no, we got permits in no scenes. So
Yep.
the film was
Okay. Oh,
shot
okay.
completely, yeah, the film was shot completely guerrilla, no permits. And that location is owned by the LA DPW. So the Los Angeles Department of Public Works
Yep.
owns that area under the bridge there. And there's a fence there and stuff like that. And so I was scouting that area for no less than a month or two. And I lived not too far away, and I would ride my bike down there to see when the gates are open and when they're closed. And if they were closed, how can I get inside? Because it's a really cool location. It's under
Yeah.
major freeways, like some of the biggest freeways in the country. And you're in the bottom of this river, this man-made river, like Terminator 2 style, but much wider.
Mm.
And I just felt it was like a really cool location. And because the film was so low budget, I felt I could make up for that in awesome locations that we haven't seen before, and showing a
Mm.
side of LA that we haven't seen before. And to, spoiler alert, do what we did to him under the bridge felt really visceral and mesmerizing. I really wanted to create like engaging scenes that pushed the envelope and got the viewer more engaged and were shocking, and try and pull it off.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely effective. Like, that to me is the maybe the most memorable sequence of the film.
Yeah.
In a film that has, plenty of memorable sequences. Um, you mentioned the term guerrilla filmmaking. Is it harder to cast a film going in knowing there will be no permits, knowing that it is going to be like, hey, we're gonna have to dash in here, try and do a couple of setups before we get told to move out and stuff like that? Is that a harder thing? Did they know they were getting into a guerrilla film, or what was that whole process like? Because your cast is
Yeah,
wonderful.
it can be. I had the good fortune of, I've been shooting movies long enough on the indie level,
Mm,
like doing guerrilla when I needed to. I felt always very comfortable doing guerrilla. Something about the adrenaline rush,
yeah,
and I feel very comfortable as a director on a film set, and making sure time is going the way I need it to, and coverage and all that stuff. That when you have like a fine and like a small amount of time, that's something I feel comfortable with. So there's that part of the equation. The other part is, the bigger part is getting the people that will go along with you on
mm,
that mission. I was very fortunate in this one that we told everyone, we're incredibly transparent. Like when we were casting, like, just so you know, there's no permits. We're going completely guerrilla, but it's going to be a very safe and comfortable environment. You're not going to be asked to do things that you wouldn't be uncomfortable doing, or would put you in an unsafe environment or anything like that. Like, there was a big disclaimer always, and everyone was so jazzed up about that. They were actually
yeah,
excited about, and I'm saying, like it was like actual, like it was a part of the movie that I think people were incredibly excited about. And so that's how we did it. Like, everyone knew at the beginning of each day, I had a speech, like, if the cops come, don't talk to the police other than, hey, talk to Jonathan, he's over there, and just be very cordial and respectful, and guide them. Or if a neighbor or a business owner, just tell them to go to me. And so there was the plan. Everyone felt comfortable doing that. And we had zero problems. The police did come like a handful of times, but they were always very cool about it. Like, because had a good control of my environment, and I wasn't doing anything like crazy, like shooting guns or pyrotechnics or anything like that. So they allowed me to do it, and we were approached by a lot of people, but I made sure beforehand I went to each location and introduced myself to whoever I could see in an eye shot and told them I'm making this YouTube video.
Yep.
And but then when we show up, there's like 15 people, but it was very structured, it was very organized, and we spent no more than 3 hours or so at each location. So enough time to do it, get our coverage without getting too little coverage, and then move on.
That seems quick. Like for like, obviously I'm not in the industry myself, but when I hear about setups, when I watch behind the scenes, it feels like to get even just a scene can take, half a day. So to get in and out in
Again,
3 hours sounds very quick. Um,
yeah, I'll break one down for
yeah,
you.
that'd be great.
So you know the scene where Vince is talking to the cannabis regulator with downtown LA in the
Yes.
background?
Yep.
Looks very cool. It's an awesome background, and you've got
Great
the
shot.
bridges, the
Yeah.
right and left, helicopters landing, lots of noise. It's great. So I love when we were doing the sound mix. I was telling the designer, like, utilize the noise. I want to feel like we're there. So that's a good example. The script is about 92 pages, 93, and like a bunch of scenes. There's a ton of scenes in the
Yeah.
film, and a lot of them are under a page. So I'm only shooting one page or a page and a half. So if we take that downtown LA one, we're there for a page, page and a half. Got James Logan, got Anthony Molinari, only two actors, and I don't need more than 3 hours. We land there, we just scout it out really quickly, and then I just need to shoot Anthony getting out of the car. So that's like one point of coverage, and we just track him over to the two cars that are parked there. And then I'm just shooting two close-ups, one of each, and I'm shooting a medium, and then I'm shooting a wide. And if I want to, I'll come out and I'll shoot more. So I think that's maybe 5 or 6 points of coverage I
Yeah, sure.
mentioned there. And it might be like one or two I pick up. I think I also, actually, I cheated more while I was there. So because we ran on time, I also shot, there's a scene later in the film where Vince just got robbed and he's got to hunt down the Armenians or something like that. And we have a
Yeah.
close up of his eyes as he's racing down the street. We had time there. So James Logan, who played the cannabis inspector, left. We're like, oh, let's shoot the eyes. So
Yeah.
we had the whole parking lot to ourselves. So we did a bunch of close-ups of the eyes. You see the eyes, that extreme close-up, and we shot his foot hitting the pedal.
Yeah.
And then we left.
Nice. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. You mentioned also 92 pages. I'm so glad you brought that up because it's a quick film.
Yeah,
And considering the subject matter, considering how much story there is in there, because it is like there's a lot of different scenes, there's a lot of story in there. I think like if you saw the Hollywood studio version of this, you're looking at minimum 2 hours, like 2.5 hours. But I think you've proven that like if you're efficient, if you kind of cut it down, you can tell a really well paced story, a really engaging story, and give all the background you need in. It might be one of the most succinct like 90-minute films I've seen. Like I can't believe
it's
how much
good.
you
Yeah.
packed into it. And I could have watched it for another half hour. I think it's so engaging,
Yeah.
so visually um, wonderful. And as I mentioned, that cast. We'll come back to the cast in a second. I could have easily sat around. Like you definitely like earned my keep there, but you didn't. You were like, "No, get out of here. 90 minutes and done." Was that
Yeah.
always the plan to try and keep it short, or
It was like I didn't want to, because there's been about a 10-year span between my first feature and this one, and
okay?
a bunch of shorts and docs and all that stuff along the way. So I wanted to set myself up for success.
Mm,
And I was like, if I can write this in 90 pages, I got 90 minutes is a very specific like pace and trajectory and formula that goes into 90 minutes. And people can watch 90 minutes easily. As long as you have a cohesive story,
mm,
they'll stay there. So I wanted to set myself up for success, that even if the movie sucked, it's only 90 minutes long. And with the cool scenes here and there, it'll keep them guided and it'll be fun to watch. But I fell in love with the 90-minute film because like there's a lot of content out there for us to watch. And I think a
mm,
lot of us, when we look at the TRT or the running time of films, and we see 2.5 hours, like, I'm not prepared to watch that right now.
Mm,
But 90 minutes, like, sure, yeah, I'll watch 90. Um, so that was kind of the thought process behind that. But I fell in love with the 90-minute film, and I was hoping like the next scripts I write after that were 90 minutes, but they're not. Like I'm looking at my board here. I got a board on the wall here
nice.
with like a bunch of not post-its, but like index cards
Sure.
of two different films. And one film is 110 pages, and the next one here is 125 that
Yep.
I just finished writing. And I'm like, oh man, I would love to write the 95-minute one, but I got one that we're writing right now with another writer that will come out to like 90. And I
Nice.
think there's something fun about that. There's like a specific formula and pace, and you can really like launch a rocket with it by like getting your story out in X amount of time in the beginning, get really creative with your midpoint for where the characters are going, and then launch the rest, like have it take off. And that's what I tried to do with the last deal was by the time we get to that river scene where that violent event happens, the film takes off.
Yep.
And it seems like everyone like from that point when they watch it, that's the point that everyone's like, oh, I'm starting the movie and now I'm completely in my seat and I don't want to eat any more popcorn and it just takes off.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I also grew up on the 90-minute movie and fell in love with it. I running time. I mean, I all I do is watch movies. Like I watch 300 movies a year. Like it's all I do
Yes.
when I'm not looking with my family. So running time doesn't always impact me. But when I am trying to watch, a few more, if I do have reviews and stuff, like running time is very important. And it's so funny you mentioned that because I had a really big smile on my face. I pulled up the last deal. I put it on. I was like, 90 minutes. Jeez, all right, great. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
excited, didn't know what to expect. It's a feature. I was expecting like 2 hours. Like, oh my god, like I'm even more excited for this movie now than I was. And as I
Yeah.
said, I could have easily watched the 2 hour version of that film because it's just so fun and wonderful. Fun feels like a weird word to use because there's some horrible stuff in it, but it is.
Right. No, I could have expanded more upon characters and stuff like that, but I was only trying to write this movie that would get on Amazon and get on Apple and stuff like that. Not like a license deal, but that you would purchase it.
Mm,
And that was the main goal. I would just get it out there no matter what, which is easy enough. Anyone can do that. And get it seen. But it became larger than that, which was good.
yeah. Um, I do want to come back to the cast, but you mentioned Amazon. What was that process like? Getting your film out there is, generally when you are independent, like the success stories are like, oh, we took it to Cannes, we took it to Sundance, it was bought. Those are, I guess, the most common ones. But you've gone direct to digital and streaming. So, was that a difficult process? Was it? Did you have any kind of obstacles there? How was that all for you?
Yeah, so to like unpack that, I started reaching out to distributors and sales agents when I had the script. So
Okay,
when the script was done, I was reaching out already because I was like, hey, if someone wants to buy this, I'll allow you to make it. I don't need
smart.
to,
Yep. Yeah.
yeah, like I don't need to direct it because I wrote that script in 30 days and then I did the rewrites over the course of the next 4 or 5 months. So I was prepared, like, hey, I have plenty of stories inside of me. Let me just, if someone wants to buy this for a good price, they can go off and buy it. But at the same time, people now will know about the movie, and when it's done, this is ready for distribution because I'm
Mm,
making this no matter what. So that was the trajectory. I was making it, shooting it no matter what. By April 2020, we ended up shooting in September 2020. But while I'm shooting, I stopped reaching out to distributors. Then, once the film was done, and I had my trailer. So once the film was done being shot, and call it like November of
yep.
2020, I started giving the trailer out to distributors, be like, "Hey, this is the movie I have. We're about done with it. Blah blah blah." And then I was getting interest from a lot of distributors, like Vertical wanted to release it. Cinedigm, which now changed their name, they're the ones that released Terrifier.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
yep, yep.
yeah. So there was a lot of like your indie distributors, like all the big ones were interested in the last deal, including El Rey wanted it as an El Rey original for Robert Rodriguez for his
Yeah.
company. And that was really cool. I remember I got that email. I was like, "Oh fuck, that's awesome!" Like this guy who I look up to and stuff like that. But anyway, so I finished the movie. like the editing part, and now I'm like, I don't want to do a lot of festivals. I only want to do two or three because I want to release the film as soon as possible. My goal
Yeah.
isn't to do festivals, just maybe like one or two. And I was fortunate enough to get into the two that I wanted to or knew I could get into. And then the offers started coming in and just sort of play with the offers and see what's best. And so I ended up working with Skatina and Rossner, who are partners of mine now and good friends, and looking to make my next film. But in terms of this one, I was like, I really want a streaming deal. I really want to make sure that you're going to pitch it to HBO Max and all of those because I
Mm.
feel like it's good enough that can be on there, or I hope it can. And Skatina ended up giving me a 22 theater release and getting a license deal on Stars.
Oh,
And
awesome.
yeah, and the moment I heard about the Stars deal, I was like, oh my God, that's incredible. Like, um, yeah, so that was a very fortunate circumstance. And the way it rolls out is you do your Amazon and Apple and Google Play, which are all like, they're not buying it, you're just putting it on their service and you pay for it $7.99 or $5.99 or whatever the case is. Do that for 3 months, and then you go on your license deal with Stars, and then you do your AVOD. So I'm on AVOD now, which is the advertising video on demand, and we're on Tubi here in the States, so people can watch it for free. And that's sort of the trajectory of the movie, and it over exceeded, over excelled, or whatever the term is, what my expectations were of the film.
Oh, that's fantastic. I
Yeah,
do want to ask you about that as well, but I'll come back. Others, we want to talk about your cast, and your casts are fantastic. I've heard that when it comes to casting a film, it can be both a very exciting and sometimes quite a tedious process. Um, I think your cast is excellent. Like Anthony, as I mentioned before, like he really carries that film. Um, and you know, as an actor, I'd never really kind of come across before, and he's so wonderful. Um, is it Jeffrey? I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. You
yep,
know,
Jeffrey, yep,
yeah. I think is absolutely the heart of this movie. Like, I think there's a
yeah.
version of this story where that character doesn't exist, and you still have a pretty good action film. But the stuff that she's doing in the scenes that she in, I think, really grounds it and like gives it, yeah, this wonderful beating heart. What was the casting process like, and did you have a lot of contenders in particular for those particular roles?
Yeah, so it's very fortunate to land those two.
Mm,
Um, Jeffrey, as you're saying, just has like she's just an awesome person and really brought that on screen too. And so she was casted off of we had ads on Breakdown, and
yep.
I think LA Casting. So we did castings, and then for the lead, I wanted to make sure I had a stunt guy because I
Yep.
didn't want to do doubles, and I wanted to make sure I kept everything on camera and have someone, because there's not like a lot of stunts, but there's some fighting and stuff like that. And you want it to look real. So I want to make sure I got a stunt guy in that role because a lot of your stunt performers get lines in movies nowadays. It's no longer the
Mm,
way films were in the 50s and 60s and 70s, where it's like double and then the double comes in and he does a thing, and then the other guy comes in. It's changed a lot over the years. The stunt performers get lines and they have a ton of experience in front of the camera
mm.
and they can act. So it was very important to get that. And so my good buddy Carl Safario, who's one of the producers on the film, that also coordinated the stunts. He's a veteran stunt guy. He's been around a long time. You probably remember him in Casino. He was the guy with his head in the vice.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
great.
He's been in a ton of films. And so I knew with him behind the camera, I was very confident with the stunts in front of the camera. So he knew Anthony, and that's how I got Anthony. And then Anthony knew Sala, who played the bad guy, and that's
Mm.
how Sala came to be. And
He's
everyone
also
else,
wonderful. I
yeah,
couldn't remember everyone's name, but he's gee, what a force to be reckoned with. He really brings the right level of menace without hamming it up. It's like he's gets to play that fun 80s action villain in a
yeah,
way, but there's an earnestness to his performance where you're like, oh no, this guy means business. Like, yes, like he gets to be a little bit more larger than life, but there's some serious threat behind those words. Yeah.
exactly. And these are untapped resources. Like these stunt performers have
Mm,
so many hours like in front of the camera with on Marvel films, like the biggest films. Like it doesn't phase them being in this smaller film, but now they finally are in a bigger role.
mm.
So very fortunate in that regard. And then yeah, everyone else was on breakdown, so we did our castings. We shot the film during COVID lockdowns. So we had more people available to us that wouldn't normally be available. And it was just a good like family environment too. They were
Mm.
all in, everyone bought in, they were excited, passionate, and we're off running around LA like crazies, like shooting the movie.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love your cast. I think they're fantastic. I think everyone,
thank you.
yeah, that's just some wonderful performances. Again, like being an independent production, like it seems like you really went the independent route with your casting as well. And I love seeing actors and actresses I haven't seen on screen before. It brings a real another layer of that realism. It's like, okay, well, I'm not like, well, that's clearly Brad Pitt. Like, do you know what I mean? I can kind of just invest in the story a lot more. And your cast, yeah, is wonderful. Even when we take that, there's a left turn in the film where it goes in a direction I wasn't expecting, where Vince goes back to his mum's place. I was like, oh, was like, "What are we doing? Like, what's going on here? Like, let's like dig into this." And even that, like, you got the woman who plays his mother, and then the woman
Yeah,
who works for her, Audra, I think it is, if I remember correctly. I was looking
yeah,
people, trying to
Audra,
remember
and
people, and not doing a
yeah,
very good job. Like even that, I was like, "Wow!" Like I wasn't expecting this film to go here. I'm really digging these vibes here. Like, what a yeah! Everyone is just so wonderful in it.
yeah, yeah. I was so fortunate. Like that's like half the battle right there is getting your cast, and the crew was amazing. Like Dominic, the DP. I was just very fortunate to be surrounded by so many talented people that put their heart into the film too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole reason the film performed the way it did.
Yeah. Um, we are getting very close to the end of the hour. I want to make sure we get all our questions out. I don't want I don't want to make you go over. How has the reception been to the film? Has it been received well? You mentioned it's been on a few different streaming platforms now. So, what has the response been like, and what has that done for you? Like you mentioned, you got a couple of projects in the works now. So, how has life post the last deal been?
The reception has been amazing. Like I've been very excited with the response to the movie, like especially from the indie community. Like they've really have gravitated towards it and embraced it. And then in terms of like opportunities, like finally like it's what I've been wanting the whole entire time of my career was to have a little bit more recognition and ability to make movies. And so the opportunities I've been given since the film have been great. The doors that have opened. So I've been very grateful in that regards that now like even though I've been doing this as a career for over a decade, like now, like it finally feels like I'm actually a filmmaker.
Yeah.
So,
Is so the
mm.
imposter syndrome was there? You felt like you weren't really a filmmaker up until now?
Yeah, I guess in that regard, you can look at it like that. Like I didn't have the validation,
Yeah.
and so now I finally have the validation, and it's a springboard. Like the door isn't like wide open, but at least now like it's unlocked.
Yeah.
And it's up to you to like do the rest and bring it up another level. And so that's where I'm at right now, like trying to get the next film made, which would bring the career up another level.
Mm.
And it's a case of there's a director who passed away, but his name's Daniel Zarilli, and he's made a ton of movies, a lot of these action films. And I talked to him uh, a few times when I was making the last deal, just about distribution and after making the movie and stuff like that. And he was making a lot of like $2.5 million films, sometimes three or so. And he was just telling me like how difficult it was for him to go from the $500,000 film to the 2.5, and then to go from the 2.5 to the 5 or the 10, just to get the agents on your side to allow their clients to read or be in that movie is its own set of like glass ceilings, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, it's about like moving the career forward and trying to progress your opportunities and make the larger film. Because I can't make this film again. I can
Yeah.
try, but it's like to make a completely guerrilla film and stuff like that, it's hard. And like on an incredibly low budget. You can continue to make them nonstop, but you get caught in that box.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned you had a couple of projects kind of lined up now. So you got two on your board as is, and you're in the middle of writing a third one. Um, can you talk about what's coming up next, or is it too early to tell? Like,
Yeah,
are
no,
you
no. So we have one film we're packaging right now, called Death Diner 76.
great
And
title? I'm already in.
yeah, I didn't write it. I did some of the polishing on it. And that movie is about a waitress on parole that works at a diner during the graveyard shift. And the head chef has a infatuation with her and
Mhm.
wants to start a killing spree in her honor. And she's doing it in a way to get famous. And it takes place in 1976, so there's no Instagram to be famous in 1976.
Sure.
The only way to be famous for her is to be like Bonnie and Clyde and get on the news.
Yep.
So we're packaging that right now. I have a very well-known actress tapped to play the lead. We
Oh, cool.
this last week I talked to another actress who wants to play the co-lead. So we have the pieces set up, and it's so hard, like getting your film made. Like you have to
Yeah.
have so many irons in the fire at one time. This is the one that I would want to make next, that hopefully, the gods of filmmaking smile upon me and we can make it this year. But it's lined up to be shot this year, and we're moving towards making that film next.
Awesome. That sounds
Yeah.
really fun. That sounds like that sounds like it was made for me already. I can hear like
Yeah.
all the tropes that I
Yeah,
like.
it's a horror slasher.
Yeah, awesome. And I
Yeah.
like that you mentioned the Bonnie and Clyde angle, which is not something you traditionally see in horror. It generally tends to be, a big scary guy chasing, beautiful girls. Like that's basically what it
Right.
is.
No, this is a scary woman chasing a woman.
Yeah, awesome. Excellent, Jonathan. We're almost at the end of the hour, and I want to make sure I get you out on time. I don't want to keep you over. Before we wrap things up today, where can people find you? How can they support the film? Um, yeah, if you want to throw
Thank
out your
you.
all your details, yeah.
Yeah. So I think we launched in Australia about a month ago. So we should be available in Australia on Amazon, I believe, to rent.
Yep, you're on Amazon Prime. I can confirm that. Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, excellent. So yeah, it's on Amazon Prime in Australia. It might be there in New Zealand too. But and around the world, it's on Amazon pretty much everywhere around the world.
Yep.
We're in physical media in Germany, which is cool. And then
Oh,
in the
awesome.
US, yeah, in the US, we're on all of the platforms, including Tubi. So they can
Yep.
watch it for free on Tubi. And then you can always go to thelastdealmovie.com or go to the Instagram page. We get a lot of traffic on the Instagram page. I think it's at the Last Deal Movie.
Yep.
You
Yeah,
can
I've
learn
spoken
about
to
it there
Jamie
as
quite a
well.
bit. They've been in regular contact and very friendly
That's
and very
good.
patient. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, she's doing a great job. But yeah, but yeah, thank you again for having me, and appreciate the conversation.
No, thank you for coming. You've been wonderful and such a great insight into the filmmaking process and how this like it's crazy that you made this movie in the time that you did, the way that you did, because it looks like it should be standing shoulder to shoulder with those Hollywood blockbusters. Like it plays like the films I watched when I was a teenager. Watch it as well. Like it's a wonderful movie. So I hope people go out and support it. Definitely go check it out. Like it's so worth your time. Um, yeah, thank you, Jonathan. You're welcome back anytime. If Death Diner 76 when that comes out, we can have a chat
Yes.
if you want to. I know I'm
Yeah.
interested in that one as well. Go and support Jonathan. Go and support his film. Go say hi to Jamie on Instagram. And thank you everyone for listening. We'll be back next week with a team show. But until then, as I say every week, guys, I was a teenage film snob, but I'm trying to be better. We'll see you next week.